Okay, so welcome everybody to today's IOE Lunch and Learn. If any of you are here for the first time, then we run these, most weeks during the academic semester and have a whole range of exciting topics, and today is no exception. Our guest today is Katie Horvath. She's the CEO of Naveego, a leading provider of cloud-first distributed data accuracy solutions located in beautiful Traverse City, Michigan. And she's also an IOE alum, and she, in addition to that, has a law degree from the University of Notre Dame, and she's done some very exciting things over the course of her career, including substantial work as an entrepreneur, developing companies, and she's been recognized nationally, including recognition by U.S. Congress with a Leadership Award for innovation in business models in the healthcare industry. And she is one of the first CEOs in a data analytics company in the U.S. Who is a woman. And so we're very excited to have you here, Katie, and to share some of your thoughts and ideas with it. And I'll turn things over to you.
Sure. And thank you very much, Brian, for having me. And thanks to the IOE group for listening. The first thing you'll probably notice on my title slide here is I have a different title and a different company listed. And that's because I'm really excited to announce that Naveego was acquired. Strategic investor Analytics acquired us early this year, which was our goal, our exit strategy as a startup company, and we achieved it ahead of goal in the middle of a global pandemic. So went from being CEO of a company that dealt in data management. We were a team of about 13. And now I am leading marketing and communications for a company of 250 that's centered in Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio. And so it's got really exciting news for our company Naveego, and really excited to be able to take the data integration piece of our technology and plug it into a much bigger platform that is an end-to-end product that includes cloud. We have our own corporate cloud, which is here in the Midwest, and we even have like FedRAMP security on it, which is a big deal. I think we're the only ones in the Midwest to have that level of security, which means we can have DoD data sitting in it. And that's right in, part of our data centers in Michigan. So that's awesome for Michigan. And then we have a team of data scientists with an innovation lab. And so it's just an amazing opportunity for my little Naveego company, but really looking forward to carrying the story forward. So in terms of digital transformation, it's a buzzword you hear in all over the place in financial industry, manufacturing, healthcare, kind of everywhere you go. But so many people are trying to be successful in digital transformation, and yet most of them actually end up failing. And so I really wanted to use the time today to take it back to my roots in IOE to really start talking about how you as an IOE can make digital transformation successful in your organization, regardless of what your role ends up being. I look back to when I was a student at Michigan, and at this point in time, the idea of automating workflow was very different from what it is today. I have to laugh because I interned for my dad. He was a 401k financial planner, and he was trying to calculate commission splits for his office. And I went into a spreadsheet program, which predated Excel. It was called Lotus 123. And I wrote a macro just to do commission splits. And at that point in time, they were so astounded. One of the large national insurance companies, Lincoln National, asked if they could use my code because they had never seen anything like this, and they were used to using their adding machines and things. And so I just kind of take it back to when I was an IOE student, how far we've come since then to where we are today. Yet one thing remains true, everybody. Technical communications is the most important class you will ever take. And I know everyone hates that class, or they dread, oh gosh, this is so boring. But really and truly, no matter what your role is, I don't care how brilliant your technology is, if you can't describe it to others to make sure that they understand what the need is for it, why it's useful, and how it's going to benefit the business, at the end of the day, no one cares. So technical communications, I'm putting in the plug for that. So in industry, what are executives hearing? They're hearing that AI and machine learning is the future. They're hearing if you don't have analytics, you're going to be behind the curve. Buzzwords, digital transformation. In the healthcare realm, we talk about meaningful use, which means you have to use technology in your medical practice. And really, there's also a fear factor of security and compliance. We hear about security breaches all the time. And so these are the kinds of things that executives keep hearing. And really, what does the industry want though? At the end of the day, the only reason to have technology, to have data, to try to become better with your data, to go through digital transformation, it's not like to do something cool or to be the latest and greatest. It's not like my daughter going off to buy the latest iPhone because she wants the better camera or something, or to be cool with her friends. At the end of the day, no one's going to be spending money or taking on a big new project unless it's going to give you competitive edge, grow revenue, cut costs is what that means. I mean, it goes down to the economics of it at the end of the day. You also want to reduce your risk as a company. And at the end of the day, you want business outcomes. The success of a project for digital transformation shouldn't be measured in, yay, we met milestones to implement it. You get it in place. Now what? No, you got to get business outcomes out of it to make any sort of data project or digital transformation project useful. And so I always students, I do encourage you to take economics and all of the wonderful business related classes that are part of the program and options for you, because that's really important for industry. So what industry doesn't want? Projects that take years with no success. We're not a think tank. It's very different from having the academic freedom to do research of a university. It gets down to the bottom line. Don't want technology just for the sake of technology. It has to be tied to that outcome I mentioned. Cool features. Nope. Sorry. If it's not going to sell something, if it's not going to increase your revenue, we don't want cool features. And when you're trying to talk about what you've done with creating better technology or better software, whatever it is, features don't sell. No one cares unless, again, it's going to tie into a problem that it's solving, or it's going to be used, for those business outcomes. The other thing I just want to say too is when I, as a CEO of Naveego, I didn't want my dev team to be developing things because they were just cool features, right? It was always needing to be tied to commercial success. And so the questions that I would always ask my team every week when we would do our, stand up and our Scrum management for backlog management on our software development, it was, okay, this feature, what is this tied to? Is this holding up a sale? Is this something that a customer needs right now? And if the answer was no, it's just something we thought would be cool to add, guess what? It didn't happen. Because at the end of the day, you really want to have a commercially focused product team. And that's something that's, I think that I never thought about when I was in school, but in business, it becomes key. So what's the key to digital transformation? Really, it's data is the key. When you think about it, people for a long time thought they needed to have new architecture, new hardware. Those were what people thought of as capital assets. But now we can see it's almost disposable. How quickly that kind of the technology changes and it advances. We don't have the big mainframe on site anymore like used to be the case. Everything's been moving to the cloud. And really what this has shown us is that what's the asset at the end of the day? It's data. And when you think about data, data is really a product of your business. And there are things you have to do to make it become an asset, from product to asset. But old industries like manufacturing, like insurance, they have just a mine of old data. Often it's sitting in old repositories. I call them the data basements of a company, and not being used. And that's the difference, is that it's a product and you need to make it usable to be able to make it an asset. So the data advantage to people who use their data correctly or for competitive advantage or make it turn into an asset, I mean, it's huge. $430 billion is the advantage, according to IDC, which is one of the leading industry analysts that we look to in industry for recommendations on how to succeed. And, when you think about why are we even bothering to become data driven, at the end of the day, it's to make better business decisions. You want to make your decision informed on your data as opposed to just intuition or gut. And you'd be surprised how often intuition and gut are still leading business decisions today. But one area where we can really value add is to give people data in the right form, the right format, to be able to make decisions based on data and make sure that it's not old data, not stale data, but it's contemporaneous. If we look at the data analytics advantage, unquestionably, analytics is hot. It's being used in a lot of industries. And even if we look at just like the past 5 years for finance industry, the time that's being spent in analytics has increased 75%. That's huge. Marketing, we always hear about, the targeted marketing things, and we're all probably victims to them through, you search something on Google and then all of these ads appear for you, but it's 375% increase in just, 3 years time here. Sales teams achieve their quotas faster by 4 times when they're using data to back who it is that they're targeting in prospecting. And then even in HR, is spending quite a bit more time to improve recruiting with analytics. And I think that's a department, these are 4 functional units you see across companies, no matter what the industry is. And HR is one you don't necessarily think of for analytics, but it's everywhere. And this, also kind of shows you as an IOE, there are many different career paths you can follow, many different teams you could join and be part of and really help them with data and analytics. So in order to talk about this, we need to kind of understand data. And it used to be the case that we had the one big data source in a company. You'd have, your big Burroughs mainframe or your IBM mainframe. And each functional business unit within the group had a little add-on, a module. So accounting and HR and sales and marketing, everybody worked from the same data source and data was all in one place. Nowadays, though, what we've seen are what I'm going to call best of breed applications. And so we have decentralized purchasing. It's no longer just, the CIO or the IT department buying all of the technology for a company. Rather, each functional business unit has figured out, hey, this works best for me. So sales team, maybe they're using Salesforce. Marketing might want HubSpot. Accounting, maybe they have Sage or some other accounting specific product. And by virtue of this, what we've created are a bunch of data silos within a company. So if we talk about customer data, it's very likely that one human customer is represented in a bunch of different places across a company, and yet those data sources are silos, they're fragmented, they're not connected. And so the idea of creating a customer 360 view is now something that's needed by creation of these data silos. Typical data use in an organization, since each department has its own source it's using, things are not connected. If you're trying to run analytics, you're going to get different answers to the very same question depending on which data source you use, because there's a lot of inconsistency. For example, marketing, they might have the most recent email address. Perhaps sales has an old address, but the accounting team has an update to that address for a customer. And the same can be true if we look at product, if we look at a lot of other things with analytics, but I'm just going to use customer as the example today because it's an easy one to talk about that applies to many, many industries. But basically, we have a lot of different forms and formats of the data depending on what the source is. And not only are we talking about needing to bring it together to get a full picture of what our customer looks like, but also translate all of the different data forms and formats into a common language so it can be ready to go to be analyzed in analytics. The effects of having the siloed data, often people in business, the executives are making decisions based upon data that has errors in it, not up to date, or it might be inconsistent. And so how can you trust that you're making the best decisions for your company? Fragmented data usually is inconsistent. Sometimes you end up with missing fields. Sometimes you end up with lost data. But basically, at the end of the day, all these executives are asking for dashboards. Build me a dashboard to show me where my data is, but nobody's trusting them because they know that the data filling them has a bunch of data quality issues. When we have data silos, we also are lacking data governance, which is a huge issue right now in industry. Knowing where the data came from, what the changes were made to it over time, where it's going, and who's using it. are all things that a company needs to keep track of. And when you have data silos, it's out the door. And we end up with that unused data and lost data. So these things need to be solved. When we look at the cost of bad data, now this is an interesting one. This is an IBM study. It's a very well-known rule called the 110-100 rule. And basically, what IBM did is they went out and surveyed a bunch of industry companies, and they figured out on average, they're trying to figure out like what's the cost to a company if you have errors in your data. And they figured that it costs $1 to verify a record as it's entered, because let's face it, most of the errors come from manual human entry. And if they don't verify it right as it's entered, it on average costs about $10 to cleanse it if you have data cleanup initiatives. But if nothing's done, on average, it costs a company $100 per record. And this is like opportunity cost. It's the cost of in operations, the time spent trying to track down what's the true information here if we have inconsistent information, or opportunity costs too on making decisions that are based on data with errors. This coupled with what we know from the Harvard Business Review, in that 47% of newly created data records have at least one critical error of this type that's going to be that $100. So if you look at a company that has 5 million records, and we know that 47% of them are going to have this type of an error, it adds up really quickly. You know, we're looking at 230 million is what it's going to cost this company in opportunity cost and operational inefficiencies. So getting the data right is just extremely important. Yet there's this disconnect we have between trying and succeeding for digital transformation and for analytics efforts. You can see it's like 92% of companies have accelerated their spend in data and AI investments, and yet 70% haven't created a data-driven organization. So that means only 30% are succeeding in this. So this is like where IOE comes in. I mean, man, we have a huge opportunity, guys, because there are a lot of people who want this, but why are people not succeeding? There is, you know, a lot of work to be done. And I think that really it boils down to the data. But the top reasons why data initiatives fail, the first one is going to be lack of a business adoption. Either people aren't able to adopt it, they try and they fail, or they don't have the right team members, the right technical resources, the right knowledge. Could be a cultural thing, a political thing. It used to be the case that in order to start a data project, you'd have to all like sit around the table and agree on what the data model should look like. And you're like bringing together the accounting team, the marketing team, the sales team, everybody, and all of these stakeholders. And you can imagine 6 months later, we still don't have an answer, right? So there are a lot of, you know, company reasons why things are going to fail, but really it's that lack of business adoption is the biggest reason. And also, a lot of the tools to manage data have always required technical expertise. And really, the people who are the IT experts, yeah, they're going to understand databases and database structure, but they're not going to understand the data content and be able to spot when the content has errors in it. And so you need to have a better solution that involves the data stewards and gives the owners of the data the ability to speak up and have, you know, notice when something's going wrong. And so really they need to be participating in the data management too. So how do we do this and broaden the audience of people who are going to be using this without creating even more political stall and everybody sitting around the table? And that's where we can do it by engineering, creating solutions that are user-friendly with great intuitive UI, UX experiences that are meant for a business user, that have all of the hardcore technology built into the back end. The other things that can help with data initiatives, there's a new C-level role of the chief data officer who can be the owner, and that really is an important role for companies to have, so that there's one person who's in charge of data across all of the different departments of an organization. And the CIO, the chief information officer, it's a different role. It's really not the same thing. And so this data officer is kind of a newer C-suite role, which is important to make centralized data management decisions for the entire company, knowing that, yes, different groups are going to go off and buy their best of breed application, but we've got to have a way to bring those data silos together and also prevent failure for digital transformation projects. We also know that the technologies that are being used, that's another reason why things are not working in an industry. Data management technologies typically were built for on-premises use. A lot of these big cruise ships are trying to switch to the cloud. They're not terribly nimble at doing it, when you're trying to turn that cruise ship, as opposed to being built cloud first from the get-go. Also, data management technologies typically have been expensive, requiring to have those highly skilled resources to use them. So what that means to a company is you're having to hire FTEs or consultants, not just to use, but to maintain things. And typically they've been very slow solutions. If you say, yes, I want to start this digital transformation data management effort, it's going to take 12 to 18 months before you start to see results. And that's why there's so many opportunities for breakdown along the way, because it just takes way too long. And when you think about adding in data sources, what is typical would be a data mapping project. And we often still see these Excel workbooks of taking, okay, data source X, and we got to bring it over to here. And so each field, how does it map across? What are we calling it? And, each one of these takes 6 months. And then you think about a company, and always they're going to be creating new needs and have new data sources over time. And it's like every time they add a new data source, it's going to take another 6 months to try to get it into the mix for like master data management and other things. And then we get into IoT data, and that just expands exponentially. How in the heck are we going to bring all of the device data in? And when we're looking at things like banking, the transactional data, and we have, of course, not just the structured, but now we have semi-structured, we've got unstructured data. How do you pull all of that into analytics? Really, there's a need for cloud. I'm going to be a big proponent of cloud first, because it's a great nimble way for us to get data connected through smart APIs and be able to do things on the edge before we even bring it anywhere as well. So, data transformation process. Typically, what we do is we collect our data, then we build a warehouse, then we try to make the data usable, and then we have our analytics and our dashboard. And that's kind of the digital transformation process. But each and every time, each and every step, there are ways and places where we can have breakdowns in the success. So first of all, with collect data, there's been a lot of investment in collecting data by companies, and they're not seeing any return on that because the data isn't being used. It's not even in a form or format to be able to answer the questions that they're trying to pose for, be able to make the data usable. We have the disparate data sources with conflicting formats, and the data needs to be integrated. And then we talk about third-party data, because often people are wanting to enrich their own in-house data with what you can find from third-party sources. So using my customer example, address, what is the customer's address? When we have 3 different things in marketing, sales, and accounting databases, well, often this type of information, it can be verified by grabbing a data source such as the United States Postal Service source to verify your data against a third-party source. And so there's a need to be able to bring that into the mix too when we're trying to create accurate data and we're trying to get something that's ready to go for analytics. But we know data continues to increase exponentially, and so the problem's just only getting bigger. So building a warehouse, this is kind of one of the first steps people do to try to bring their data together to integrate it. And it could be a lake, or a data warehouse. But basically what it's doing is it's solving the problem of moving data into one place, but yet the data sources are still not connected. They're still not integrated. They're still not put into a format that you can feed it into analytics and have it ready to go. Usually in data warehouses, there's still no data quality, no governance. The lineage is broken. We don't know anymore where did it come from. And if in the data warehouse we decide to take some actions to try to clean up the data, it's not getting cleaned back in the source systems where the line of business is using the data. So in that sense, it's like, great, maybe we're going to have analytics that work, but people making decisions day to day, they're going to be doing that based on data that's riddled with errors. And so that really doesn't make sense either. And often in the warehouse phase, this is where projects stall with the IT department. they get really backlogged. And so, executives are pounding them saying, I want my answers. I want my dashboard right now. What is this? And they're getting pounded from the business because the business users are like, well, wait a minute, I need to, be able to answer these questions. So please give me a query. I have a query for you. Please give me the data set, the results that I'm looking for. Like in a bank, how many customers do we have that have mortgages but no auto loans? That kind of a query that they don't have the ability just to find in their customer, CRM database, but yet they want. So poor IT, they get stuck in the middle, right, of everybody pounding them. And so a lot of times the warehouse project gets stalled and it hasn't solved the problem. So then we go to trying to make the data usable. And this is where the data scientists come in, the business analysts come in, and the data engineers come in. And what we know is that with data scientists, typically they're spending 80, and there are some quotes that even say up to 90% of their time just trying to find the data and prep it to make it ready for analytics instead of analyzing it. Gosh, let's just, do this for them, automate it, and so everybody can get straight to the analytics. And in industry, nobody can find data scientists. They're a rare bird breed to be able to have in an organization. And if you look at job satisfaction for data scientists, most of them are not happy. And this is exactly why, because they're not getting to do the fun stuff. They're spending their time cleansing data, finding it, trying to stitch it together. And most of them can't even find the data they're looking for, so they're feeling like they're not being successful in their jobs, and analytics projects are failing. So guys, there's got to be a better way for us to engineer this. But when we get to the dashboard phase, as I mentioned, we have different data sources, and so you get multiple answers for the same question posed depending on what source you use. And really, it's kind of dismal statistic that only 14% of CIOs think at this point in time that they've fully deployed successful AI analytics solutions. And this is, from Gartner this year. So even though it seems almost like a no-brainer that these problems should already be solved, they should have been solved back when I was a student, maybe, but they haven't been. And there's just so much opportunity for us to engineer better solutions for data and data management. Okay, so if analytics isn't enough, that sometimes people say analytics is nice to have, let's talk compliance for a minute. This is the need to have or you're going to go out of business stuff. And so we know that GDPR and the California Privacy Act, which is now CCPR, under this, customers have a right to be forgotten. And you need to be able to comply with this or you get fined, and the fines add up very quickly under both of these laws. CCPR gives us 45 days. GDPR only gives us 30 days to act when a customer asks you to act. Basically, first of all, you have to be able to make the data portable and say, if a customer calls up and says, hey, I want to see everything you have on me, you have to be able to do that within 30 days. How are you going to find all of the data about a particular customer if it lives all over your company in all of these different data silos? It's impossible. People are not set up to be able to comply with this, let alone delete it all if indeed the customer invokes the right to be forgotten. So this, again, this is just, huge case for why we have to have centralized data management, why we need the governance, so that, if a customer asks for all their data, you can point to every system that has it, and you can rapidly and easily be able to make it portable and also deleted if indeed the customer wants to be forgotten. So let's now talk about successful implementing digital transformation. The first thing that you need to be able to do in a successful solution is discover your data. What do you have? And this is where I refer again to the old IBM mainframes and the data basements. You want to know what data is available to me as an organization. A lot of it is junk. A lot of it can be usable. And so it's needing to understand what it is you have before you move it, before you decide to do anything with it, so you can make those decisions. And this involves being able to do profiling on the data, and you want to do that out on the edge before you move the data. Most solutions in industry move data first and then they profile it. And a couple problems with this. First of all, it's not economical to have all of that movement and data storage. But also, what if you're moving and using like HIPAA data or Social Security data, and you're doing it the wrong way because you didn't know what was there, and so you didn't know how to appropriately treat it with encryption and hashing and other security techniques. And so really you want to be able to first of all discover your data so you can decide how to use it and then also put your safety precautions in place. Next thing we need to do is integrate it. So we have all of those data silos. We need to be able to bring them together and make things usable that otherwise are sitting there unused. We want to make sure our solution covers on-premises data sources, because even though I'm like cloud, many companies still have on-premises data. We often hear hybrid and multi-cloud, and that's really the wave of the future, meaning that you don't have to, say, hey, I'm going to go with AWS for my cloud. Really, people have their data scattered among different cloud sources, and they have things still that are on premises that as a data engineer, you need to be able to bring all of those things together and have your solution have the ability to include third-party data sources too. So not saying move it, though, that does not make sense. We're saying connect it. We don't want to become a big data repository with a solution. We want to be able to connect to the places where the data lives and yet be able to integrate it into a record that makes sense and is accurate. And this is where the data cleansing comes in. So one of the things that we can do is take the data profiling that we did out on the edge, and the data profiling can tell us what we expect for values, what we expect for ranges. And from that, we can start to build data quality checks so that if something is not in range, we know, hey, there's a problem here. And so we can flag that as starting to set up our data quality initiative for our solution. And that can be automated. So it can be automatically detected if something is wrong and automatically enforced and changed. Then we also want to make sure that as we're doing our cleansing, really we're using our AI and machine learning as part of this. And the idea is to make it so our data models move from reactive, then to proactive, from there to predictive, and finally to prescriptive. And this all can be achieved with creating with data quality. The goal is creating a golden record to be that single source of truth across the business. You want the golden record to be accurate, to be trusted. It's cleansed, the data is matched, where you have records, those customer records in the various different silo systems. You match them together to make sure that you understand this is all about the same human. You merge it together, and you can set rules for, in your new data model you're creating, you can do it field by field. So maybe the marketing system has always the most trusted and latest and greatest email address, but maybe accounting has the best street address. And so you can have merging rules. Okay, go to accounting first for street address. If it's not right there, we'll fall back on our CRM. And if not there, maybe we'll fall back on the marketing system. But for the email address, let's start with marketing and kind of set those priority of rules for which source you think is going to be the most accurate. Once you create that golden record, it's ready to go for analytics. And that's moving it forward up chain. But also think about making sure that it's available for bidirectional sync to take the golden record back down to the source systems, so those in the line of business are operating off of same set of facts in every department across a company. And we need to be able to handle data in motion too with our solution, because we want everything to be real time. There's a huge demand for it, and the technical achievements and strives always are to make sure things are quicker and faster so that we're making decisions based on contemporaneous data. Next, we've got to deliver our data. So we've created this wonderful golden record. Well, where are we going to take it? We want to be able to take it to our dashboards, executive reporting. We want to take it for analytics. And you need to also make sure that you create a solution that doesn't have vendor lock-in. And what I mean by that is there are technologies you can use that are specific to maybe AWS or maybe Google Cloud or something like that, that then you're always stuck with that one cloud provider. Well, that's not the best news for a company, because what if something happens to that provider, or what if the prices go up? Rather, when you're engineering a solution, make it so there's no vendor lock-in. Take the time to build it such that it works with multiple different places. And that way you're going to have a much broader appeal, and you're going to be more nimble with your solution. And in turn, the organization you're working for will have that nimble approach too. So, maybe people are in Snowflake, maybe they're in SAP. Just the ability to deliver your data to a whole bunch of different sources is important. Governance, I mentioned that. We have our lineage trail we want to have. Our solution needs to include where the data came from, where it went, the changes made. And from this, you can start building a data catalog and a data dictionary, which are extremely important aspects of data management. So at the end of the day, the successful use of data, we have all of our different departments, all of our weird disparate forms and formats of data. We take it into the center to create that golden record. And then from there, it can go everywhere. But the important thing is it's the same set of facts and it's in real time and it's cleansed and cleaned and it's trusted. And so we're not going to get different answers depending on who's trying to run a query or who's trying to do analytics. Technology game changers, the cloud, it really increases time to value. I mentioned those 6-month data mapping projects. With using a smart API connector, you can connect a data source in minutes as opposed to 6 months time. And I mentioned most companies have that hybrid multi-cloud needs. And so cloud has really sped things up and made data much more accessible. And for building and engineering data solutions, it's a huge game changer. The other thing is, I have one more slide in here about the leaders in digital transformation success. 60% of them have cloud applications as opposed to the folks who are lagging. We have a lot of mainframe stuff. And so the statistics really do show the difference. Cloud also lowers spend, by the way. So the other big technology game changer is making something self-service. And this is something that the business user, the data steward, the business analyst can use. Doesn't require you to know how to program in SQL or anything else, but really doing all of the heavy lifting behind the scenes so that the data can be trusted, that there's governance in the IT department and the technical folks, the engineers all understand, yeah, this is all happening, but yet you have a solution that is able to be used not just by the technical audience, but also by the business audience. And that's another huge game changer. So just in summary, the key components of success for digital transformation would be to remove the data silos. You want to have that governance. I highly recommend a chief data officer, somebody who's in charge of data across an organization. You want to make sure you have a solution where the business and the IT department can collaborate and really adopt new business models that are driven with data. And that's kind of pushing the company forward is really what the goal of a great solution is. And continue with always keep a strong customer mindset. It's not that we're engineering just for cool features or for the sake of engineering. It's really making sure that it directly relates to the bottom line of making a company more profitable, increasing customers and revenue or decreasing costs or making things more efficient. And that's what we hear about every day. So that is my keys to success. We can probably stop recording and start questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Katie. This is a really interesting and thought-provoking presentation. So on behalf of everyone in IOE, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.